Many highly skilled product specialists at Epic Games build webinars focused on many areas of the engine, including Unreal Engine real-time ray tracing for architectural visualization. You can actually go to the webinar series webpage on unrealengine.com and see some of these webinars, including photoreal automotive rendering in Unreal Engine, working collaboratively in Unreal Engine, source control in Unreal Engine, synchronizing Rhino data, Twinmotion one-click, Unreal and Quixel pushing the boundaries of 3D, and many more. We have a great many of these that are available on the Unreal Engine YouTube channel, and you can go to a special playlist called Webinar and see all of these amazing webinars that are still available on that channel for later viewing. Additionally, there is a channel for the Twinmotion webinars that are available as well. Many of these are anywhere between 35 and 50 minutes long and very easy to view and learn from. Please take full advantage of this content. It is a great learning resource. Unreal Fest Online was a special event held by Epic Games on Tuesday, July 14th, 2020. There were 50-some courses that were held by Epic Games experts, taught in a variety of different sections of Unreal Engine, Twinmotion, as well as the Quixel ecosystem. Many of those videos are now available on the Unreal Engine YouTube channel in a special playlist called Unreal Fest Online 2020. If you go to this playlist, you'll be able to see videos including Unreal Engine for Next-Gen Games, which was our feature video for Unreal Engine 5, as well as a great many courses on building worlds for Fortnite, optimizing and building UIs for AAA games, technical animation challenges for mobile titles, speeding up game logic in Unreal Engine, many videos specifically on the use of architectural visualization and real-time ray tracing, automotive workflows, as well as the fundamentals of the engine. We've got some great videos on using linear animation with Control Rig, as well as some great videos on Twinmotion and the Quixel ecosystem. I strongly encourage you to go to this channel if you're interested in virtual production, iPhone development, and enjoy all this great learning taught by experts from Epic Games and our partner companies. This is amazing learning. Make sure you take full advantage of it. Once again, like many things, this is all free. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Educator live stream. And today we are really pleased to welcome our guest, Marcos Romero, who is the author of Romero Blueprints, as well as our Educator Instructor Guides, which is the instructor guide for blueprints. And today we're going to spend the stream really talking about a lot of the material that Marcos has built in collaboration with Epic, and of course on his site, and some of the books that he's written on blueprints, and kind of dig into it a little bit because this is really valuable material. As usual, we have Mark Flanagan on the stream. He's on the top there waving his hand, and we've got Tom Shannon and the nice, delightfully colored Unreal Dev shirt there. And then we've got
We do make shirts that are other colors than black and dark gray. So I decided to show off.
I don't believe that we do. I only have black.
This is like, if we have, I've never seen one.
And then, of course, we've got Marcos Romero. And so, you know, I've known Marcos for many years now. We've had the privilege of collaborating on some really cool things. And, you know, we'll tell the story a little bit about, you know, getting to know Marcos and working with him. Marcos is joining us from Brazil, and I've tried to say the name of the city that he lives in many times, but I never get it right. Belém. But he's joining us from Belém. Belém, yeah, there we go. I'm getting it better each time. And it's a pleasure to have him join us today. He has... You know, for those of you who are not sure, you can go to unrealengine.com. You can go to the educator section and you can download a guide. If you maybe teach Unreal Engine, maybe you teach Blueprint. Marcos authored a guide for us called Blueprint, Teaching Unreal Engine Blueprint, Teaching Programming with Blueprint. And it's a guide that is a series of lectures. It's a series of in-class projects, project files, terminology sheets, tests, quizzes, that you can actually use to help teach programming with Blueprint. And so this has been a really valuable teaching resource. But let's say you're trying to learn Unreal Engine blueprints. This is also a very valuable guide. But, you know, even before we worked together on this guide, way back in 2015, I think Marcus and I worked together on a series of blueprint compendiums. And, you know, let's talk about that stuff. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a little bit about your history, because you've got a long, rich history as a programmer, game developer, and, you know, share with us a little bit about yourself. And then we'll come back and talk about, you know, the development of all this content.
All right, first, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor for me. And can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
So this is my blog, Romero Blueprints. So this is the About Me page on my blog that you can access here on my photo. And the contents of the blog you can access here on the page. This is the Blueprints contents. And now there is a new C++ contents. And the other two links are the Portuguese version of my contents. Right, so I'm Brazilian, and I started programming games with the C language when I was 14 years old. And that was my two-person game company. It was me as the programmer and a friend as the artist. We developed 6 games, and all games were programmed using the C language. And there is a video on YouTube that talks about my company and my first games. You can access this video by clicking here. So this is a blog about my company, and just the last post is the link to the video. We watch just a part of this video so you can understand my history.
Olá a todos e sejam bem-vindos de volta! Mais uma vez estamos aqui no Bel Jogos para falar de mais produção da Terra. E dessa vez vamos voltar até o começo de tudo isso para falar do começo de tudo mesmo. Para isso vamos até 1999, quando aconteceu a fundação da empresa RH Games, através de Marcos Romero na programação e Alberto Rochino no departamento de arte. Marcos Romero, programador, é um veterano que entrou no mundo dos videogames quando jogou Atari pela primeira vez no ano de 1983. Aí depois, em 86, apareceu em seu caminho o computador TK-90X, 8 bits, fabricado pela Microdigital Eletrônica. Neste sistema aconteceu o primeiro contato com programação com a ajuda de uma revista, a Input, que tinha páginas e páginas e páginas de códigos para serem testados em casa. Em tempo, o computador TK-90X tem como equivalente o ZX Spectrum, que podemos encontrar vários vídeos por aí falando qual é a dele, especialmente de canais europeus onde foi a sua base principal. Em 1993, aos 14 anos de idade, começou o aprendizado em C com a ajuda do livro Turbo C, Guia do Usuário, e dele aconteceram os seus primeiros jogos, o tiro espacial Raven e o multiplayer Mina. Também teve um jogo de labirinto, onde a criação de cada fase seria um problema, mas que foi contornado com um editor de fases, programado e colocado dentro do jogo. A partir disso, muitas coisas aconteceram. RPG e aventura em texto, um descanso de tela, a continuação Mina 2, uma engine de RPG, mais labirintos, uma entrada no mundo do 3D, e foi aí que veio o primeiro jogo que veremos hoje. RH Race é o seu nome, foi lançado em 2001. Para 1 ou 2 jogadores no teclado.
I will jump to the last game now.
E o último de hoje é Cyborg Arena, um shooter vertical que me surpreendeu, trouxe boas lembranças do Smash TV. que por sua vez é um jogo que gosto muito até hoje. Além do estilo de jogo, também dá pra ver grandes avanços gráficos, as cutscenes que mostram a história do começo e do final, os cenários que são diferentes a cada fase, tem as partículas para quando tem algum efeito de faísca, e a melhor parte de todas é que tem muitos inimigos diferentes e tem hora que a tela fica cheia deles, mas quando eu digo cheia deles. E enquanto tudo isso acontece, o grande vilão vai aparecer na tela que fica ali no meio para mandar umas provocações que dessa vez tem vozes e tudo. Os jogos que foram mostrados nesse vídeo fizeram parte de um acordo com a empresa americana Extreme Games, quando fecharam um pacote de 6 jogos para serem vendidos em mídia física no mercado americano. Aconteceu uma pequena turbulência no meio do caminho quando a Hasbro conseguiu os direitos dos jogos da Atari, e aí começaram a processar todo mundo que distribuía jogos que fossem parecidos com os clássicos. E aí deu que a Extreme Games foi um dos alvos. As publicações pararam por um tempo no site eGameZone, mas o aprendizado e a produção nunca pararam. Foi aí que depois disso aconteceu a criação da engine Rogue, uma versão de Mau Mau, aquele jogo de cartas, e um punhado de jogos que infelizmente ficaram só na ideia e chegaram a ter algumas coisas criadas, tipo suas artes. Um deles foi o universo em RPG Alta Esfera, a corrida espacial de Xenohunter, o beat'em up Beland e o de luta Tai Yang. Eles não foram finalizados, mas no site oficial, que está aí na descrição, tem o material que chegou a ser produzido, está lá disponível para ser visto, assim como todos os jogos que foram mostrados por aqui, tanto na sua versão finalizada, quanto o código-fonte, que podem ser pegos lá com fins de compartilhar o aprendizado. Como podemos...
So let's come back here. And continuing, when I was finished my bachelor degree in computer science, I decided to found a local group called Bel Jogos, with the goal to encourage the development games in North Brazil. So we did a lot of game development events in my city by the group. Let me show a photo here. So I'm here, and these 5 are the main members of the group. And we did a lot of things here in my city to help developing this area. Then I created a blog about Unreal Script. Unreal Script is the script language of Unreal Engine 3. But there were a few tutorials about Unreal Script on the internet. The documentation was the source code, so I decided to create this blog to teaching Unreal Script. Oh, sorry. And I wrote a lot about Unreal Script, and I received a good feedback, and this kept my motivation high. And then this blog became the main reference to learn about Unreal Script on the internet.
Oh, and I spent a lot of time on that website right there. So much time when I was learning Unreal Script. It was like that website and a book by Rachel Cordone. Because, you know, at that time, there wasn't a lot of people using Unreal kind of outside of the AAA game stuff. And Epic maybe didn't have the best documentation, especially kind of the onboarding stuff. So, I mean, at that time, if you typed in like Unreal Script anything, this was the website that came up. It was like it was like it, and well, and you kept working on it too. So like as Epic, you know, updated UDK and UE3, you know, it was the place to go.
Great. So because of this blog, Epic Games invites me to be part of the Unreal Engine 4 closed beta program. So that was amazing. I had the opportunity to have access to the Unreal Engine 4. It was a really top secret project. And later, Epic Games sent me a poster signed by Tim Sweeney, where he personally thanked me for being a valuable member of our community. This is crazy for me. It's awesome. But it's a great inspiration for me. And then when Unreal Engine 4 launched on 2014,
Hold on, Marcus. You got to
yeah.
show him. You have
Oh,
the you
okay.
have the photograph right there in your room. You have to show everybody because this is important.
I will show.
Okay, great.
So when Unreal Engine 4 was released, then I started this blog, the Homero Blueprint blogs. And then this was my original project. So this title, Game Programming with Unreal Engine 4 Blueprints. And then I keep writing about blueprints. And then as the other blog, I received a lot of great feedbacks about my blog. This became a great reference. People indicate my blog to other people to learn blueprints. And so because of this blog, 2015, I have some surprise. Epic Games selected me to receive a Unreal Engine Education Dev Grant for the work that I have done on this blog. It was another awesome thing to me. And after the Dev Grant, at this time I was already having contact with Luis, and I changed my focus in the Blueprints Compendium. And I wrote the first Blueprints Compendium, and Epic Games created a beautiful printed version of it and distributed at the Game Developer Conference. And it was another amazing, everything of this is amazing for me. Let me just talk about the Blueprints Compendium. So the Blueprints Compendium, there is already 3 volumes, all of them available on my blog. You can access on the blog individual posts, each actual post, but there are also PDF formats that you can download, that you can print. Let me show here. So you have one concept on each page, where there's a simple presentation of the topic, but the more important is the contextual examples that you had here. So you can see how can you use this concept, this node. The first volume is focused on the nodes. The second volume is more focused on the blueprints concept. And there is the third volume that's again focused on nodes. So this is a great material that you can print. It's a small document and use it as a reference in a classroom as a teacher or by the students. It's a simple reference that you can do a quick check, remember something. So let me come back here. And then I love Epic Games gifts.
That's the same blanket I have back there.
So, man, everyone's got that blanket but me. Oh, I guess Mark doesn't either. Okay, I feel better.
Limited edition.
Yeah.
In 2018, Epic Games hired me to write the official Blueprint Structure Guide. This is the main topic of this live stream, so you'll see this in details later. Let's keep going. The last year, PAX Publish contacted me to write the book Blueprints Visual Scripting for Unreal Engine 2nd edition. So let me explain about this book. Here, Brandon wrote the first edition of the books in 2015. So I'm the author of the 2nd edition of the book. The contents of the first book is located here now on section 2 and section 3. So I double size the size of the book. I update all the original contents. The original contents, the focus of the section 2 and 3 is to create a game step by step. You create a complete game, all the capital, keep adding features until the last chapter. So you have a full complex games here where you can create step by step. But then I add a section 1 with fundamentals when I talk about a lot of blueprints concepts, so you can really understand what are you doing when you are creating a blueprint. So there are a lot of concepts and there are a lot of states here. And then I add a section 4 with advanced topics when I can talk about a lot of other important concepts on blueprints is very useful when creating more complex games. So this is the structure of my book, right? And recently I have another great news that I submit a project to teach C++ programming in Unreal Engine to the Epic Mega Grants, and I was selected. So I have already started this project. You can access the contents here. All right, let's take a look. So there is some article already. Let me just explain the structure of this project. This is my prerequisite. I expect that they have the basics of the Unreal Editor and the basics of only the basics of blueprints. I really recommend start with blueprints so you can have the idea of the gameplay framework, understand how Unreal Engine works. So then you can go on C++. And then here, in part 1, I will focus on programming a simple game. I will present some C++ concepts so you have the first contact with it, so you see it in practice, you see it being used in a game. Right? I don't explore a lot of concepts, just the essential necessary to build our first game. Then in part 2, we will look at the concepts of Unreal C++. We focus on important concepts, focus on the C++ side. And then on part 3, we will talk about integration between C++ and blueprints. So sometimes there is something, a lot of things you can do on blueprints. Some of other things is more appropriate to do in C++. Some solution is better do if you work with both technologies, do some parts in C++ and the other on blueprints. And I will talk about this. I will talk about if you have already blueprints done and you want to convert this blueprint to C++. So there are a lot of content. This is not there isn't a really end specified. This is an ongoing project, and we'll see where we will arrive. And so just to finish my history very quickly, I'll talk that I did a lot of lectures about Unreal Engine 4 on my city, on college, on technology events. And I just want to show some photos of this lesson. It's very quick. So that's
Nice.
it. That's my history. I will
Nice.
share my screen now. All right, Luis.
Awesome.
Corey in the chat says, I miss classrooms. Those are amazing
Yes.
pictures. It's so
Thank you.
cool to see you out there, showing off game dev to all these kids and students. And You know, it's hard to get out there and put yourself in front of people.
It is, and what's great is that Marcos, maybe once every other month or so, will send us an email at Epic Games and say, "Hey, look at this class that I just finished teaching," and so he's constantly sending us updates. So, let me give you a little bit of background. I don't know, maybe back in 2015, I've been at Epic for almost 6 years now, and we were talking before the stream about how we got connected, because I think that, somewhere on a forum post or on Twitter or Facebook, I saw, Marcos's posts and was looking at your Blueprint work or some of your C++ work or Blueprint work or whatever the case might have been. And so I think I sent you an email, right? And I said, this stuff looks really amazing. And back at the time, I was one of the very few people, we had a documentation team, but I was one of the few people working on the education side, working to expand our educational offerings at Epic. And so I said, it would be really amazing if we were able to take the, blueprints as a whole and start to think about node for node, how to give contextual information, and started talking with Marcos through email about how we might be able to, use the material that he had already exposed and sort of, we started working on this idea of a blueprint compendium, which actually came from, those of you who came from Unreal Engine 3, there was a website in the documentation that had a material compendium that sort of did the same thing. You took a material node in Unreal Engine 3, and then you gave contextual reference of how to use that material node. So Marcos, if you remember, we looked back at that compendium, the material compendium that's still, I think you can find in the Unreal Engine 3 documentation. We were like, wouldn't it be amazing if, we could generate material that sort of help people understand how to learn Blueprint by using contextual reference of how to use, different Blueprint nodes. And so Marcos was like, well, let me work on this for a little while. And then you came back with some of these original nodes in your, I don't think we even talked for a while. You just said, look at my blog, right? And then when I went back, you already had a whole bunch of content in there that was basically the whole
10 nodes for you.
Yeah, you had the whole first section of the Blueprint compendium, and I was completely blown away. And I was like, this is exactly, what a lot of people have been waiting for in a lot of ways, because there's something we say, Tom and I say it, Mark and I say it, and I think a lot of people at Epic say it all the time. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so when it comes to learning Blueprint, when it comes to learning programming, when it comes to learning Unreal Engine, it's such a massive tool. And, for those of you who maybe are, exploring Blueprint and get into the Blueprint editor, and you right click and you're like, there are so many nodes in here. What do I do? How do I connect these things together?
Yes.
What is it that I'm supposed to do here? It can be a little bit challenging to say, well, what do I connect, my event begin play to? What do I connect my, input to? What do I connect my line trace to? What do I connect, my branch to? What do I connect, my character pawn to? What am I supposed to do now? And so I think one of the really valuable things for those of you who go to Marcos's blog is that, and let me bring it up really quickly because I have a reference to it here. And if you go to the actual compendiums, and they're broken up, if you go to the table of content here, you'll see that there's volume 1, volume 2, and volume 3. And it starts out very quickly by just taking you through a base level of set of nodes here, with the very first one, branch, which is basically an if statement, right? So you can go here and it explains what a branch node does, what the inputs are, and it gives you a usage sample, a visual usage sample. Here's your input, here's your branch, you take high score, you take score, you do greater than, and then you can set your high score. So, right away, there's contextual examples of how they work. And then even a deeper example, in the next image, here's another way that you can use a branch node. If it's, less than 0, then destroy actor. And so this was right away a great example of a single node, and then we kept going, for loops, and then, get actors of class and spawn actors. And right away, I was like, oh man, this is fantastic. Let's absolutely have more of this, right? And so I don't remember how long it took for that first compendium to be generated, but you worked very quickly, and I was blown away by it. Do you remember how long it took?
Yes, I quickly wrote about 10 notes and I sent you. Then take a long time to receive the first feedback, but there's a reason. You take my doc that I sent you, and you say to the project leader of the blueprints. I don't remember the
Nick
name,
Whiting,
but he told
yes.
me to analyze what I was writing, and then he gave a constructive feedback, a complete feedback that was very important to me. So because this, and then I keep going. I maybe 1 or 2 months to finish the campaign. Then I sent you the finished version, and then you created the printable version to the GDC. It was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who, and I know I've got a version of it here, who attended GDC 2016, we hosted an educator summit where we actually painstakingly took the first compendium, 16, was it 16 nodes? Is that correct? And we actually made a printed version. So there's very limited number of these available. I think I made 500 altogether, and we handed them out to folks who attended that educator summit. And I think that we had some left over. And so since then, we've given them out here and there at different events. But if you're lucky enough to have one, I think at one point, I don't know that maybe we reprinted some more and we sent some to the UK, and because they love them, and everyone who sees one is like, I have to have one of these things. So maybe at some point we'll reprint some more of them. But it takes a bit of work to get those things made, and they're super valuable. And of course, you can get all this information digitally, and you can get it. Anyone can go, and it's absolutely free. And you not only provide the blog, but you also provide all the PDFs, right? So if you go to Marcos's website, you have full access here where you can actually download the PDF, and you can have a printed version and print your own version of it, which is nice. But there's nothing like a slick gloss copy of it. And so then, then you went off and you were created version 2, which is expanding on the same thing. You went into the Blueprint editor.
Yes, I told you, let me build the version 2. I have
please.
All on my mind. It was very fast.
Yeah, tell us.
Because the first one was, the focus was on the nodes, right? And was fantastic, was important. But the second volume, I wanted to do about the concepts. So when we take the volume 1 and 2, it's a complete reference. And I read the idea, and I was really, really motivated because of all the feedback that you sent me about the GDC, the first volume. So I remember in June I finished the second volume of the Blueprints Compendium.
In June, okay. And there we were again with another great treasure trove of contextual information about Blueprint nodes. And then you went off and created the third one. I don't remember how much longer after that.
So as in 2017, I created the third volume.
So, needless to say, there's a whole lot more Blueprint nodes, but I think that and I'll switch back here, that what you've got here is, for those of you who maybe want to get into Blueprint, or maybe want to teach Blueprint, or have, maybe you're already teaching Blueprint or training at a studio or something, this actually makes up a really nice rounded set of nodes for those people that, are just maybe getting into Blueprint. And you don't necessarily always want to overwhelm someone with how much information you give them. So what's nice about, I think, this 3 sets of compendiums is that it gives, I think, a lot of good information, but not so much information that people become immediately overwhelmed by all the content that's here, which, can happen, particularly when you look at just how many Blueprint nodes there are,
Yeah. And learning blueprints, like the compendiums kind of approach it from different points, and you've got the more guided kind of curriculum, because you can't just approach blueprints with just like definitions. Then you don't get the context behind that. But you can't just approach the context, because you have to deal with the syntax and the logic. And so, I mean, this one page, just if you're looking for, like you were saying, conceptual, there's 2. If you're looking for beginner stuff, there's 1. If you're looking for some of the more advanced, or, I kind of think of 3 as these are like the you should know these. You should know these nodes, because you'll hit things in game dev, and if you know these nodes, it'll save you a huge, like modulo. If you know how to use modulo, your life becomes so much easier. And when you do, you'll look back at all your old programming and go, "Wish I'd used modulo that whole time." And some of them are like kind of little, hidden gems, like apply damage is such a great do all in Unreal. If you want 2 actors to talk to each other, just apply damage. If you don't know it's there,
right,
you won't know. And I've had to discover a lot of this stuff through trial and error.
Searching through stacks and stacks of nodes and going, what does this one do? What does that one do? What does this one do?
Or finding them, and going, or looking at Nick Whiting stuff and being like, what's this modulo thing? I don't understand. That's because he knows what he's doing, and I'm still learning.
So let's fast forward just a little bit, right? Because we were working with this compendium, and I know that I would send, when I would have meetings with instructors and professors or students or whatever, I would send them to the Blueprint compendiums and constantly say, this is a great self-service place where if you're teaching or learning Unreal, and specifically programming with blueprints, this is a great place where you can go and self-serve teach yourself. But then I don't even recall at this point how far back it was. We started working on structured curriculum that instructors and trainers could, go and download from our website to actually use to teach Unreal Engine in a variety of different ways. So we created a couple of guides. One of the guides that we created was Chris Murphy, who is one of our evangelists in Australia, created a guide for gameplay with Unreal Engine, which is an amazing guide. Mark or Tom will put up the link to where you can go and get these guides. They're all completely free. Then we had another guide for, some of them were actually tied to textbooks that are written and approved textbooks in Unreal Engine. So there's also a guide for VR with Unreal Engine. And so if you teach VR, if you teach interaction with VR or, locomotion mechanics or whatever the case is, you can go and buy the book and then also buy a guide that's associated with and these guides have they have PowerPoint lectures that are associated with them. They have project files. They have in-class projects that you can assign. And they also come in many cases with terminology sheets and quizzes, and they come with assessments of different kinds, tests that you can actually assign in class. And what's great is that it's all released through Creative Commons. So the point isn't that, we give you a curriculum and you have to use it in kind the way that it's built, but that you can actually extract the content from the PowerPoint slides or from the Word documents and use them however it is that is helpful for you. If you're a trainer in a studio, you can extract images, you can extract words, or whatever the case is, and you can use them in your own templates. So we provide it as something that makes your life easier, not necessarily that, you have to use this, the way that Epic prescribes in any way. So one of the things that is constantly asked of us is, can we teach programming with blueprints? Can we actually teach programming? Because I think a lot of people teach with Scratch, people teach with, simple IDEs and Hello World and so forth. And so then we started talking again with Marcos and said, how about we take a lot of the work that you've already done, and since you've got such a long history as a programmer and as an instructor, and we actually build an instructor guide to help teach programming with blueprints. And so Marcos said, of course we can. Yes, of course. And so, and then Tom was really instrumental because Tom had joined us already, and he was, Tom's been working with Unreal for many, many years and is quite adept at Blueprint. And so he became very involved in the process of working with Marcos on the content and, making sure that it is very clear and easy to understand. And so now we teach classes. Like last week, we taught a series of classes, and I actually use Marcos's Blueprint instructor guide to actually teach classes in programming with Blueprint. And, can you talk a little bit, Marcos, about the development of this guide and how you sort of leverage some of the material you already built and sort of some of the philosophies you had in assembling this guide?
Right. Well, let's first talk about programming.
Oh, yeah.
I have some personal concepts about programming that I share with you, but it's very important. In Unreal Engine 4 tools, there are a lot of tools, but most people can walk, can learn in video on videos and doing other things, but sometimes when they try blueprints, they can't. They stop there. There is a block, a wall there. They can't go on. So I think because programming is not just repeating a set of steps. You can watch a video and do then the same thing, but you don't know what's really going on there. So programming is more like a puzzle. You need to understand what each piece does, how each piece works, so you can get it then together to build a solution by yourself. So it's very important to practice in programming to understand basic concepts and then experiment, try. So it's more about the problem-solving skills that you need to have, not about memorization, memorizing something. Right. So you can just watch a video and repeat the step, but if you need something different, you will not be able to change, to know what each node does. So I think, blueprints, there are a lot of things about blueprints, as you said. There are a lot of nodes. I don't know all the nodes that exist, but it's a step-by-step. You need to learn some concepts and experiment with this concept and try and use your creativity to think about, if you have an example and you do this example, try to do something different. Try to experiment. What if I want this? And then you will really learn. And this the process of learning how to program, and it's not something. It takes time, of course, but it's a step-by-step process. You need to learn some concepts and practice a lot and try to do something on your own. Programming is about you find your solution. Of course, you need to know the tools, you need to know a lot of information, but you need to learn something and then just try to do something with it. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important to how to learn a program independent of the language, of the tools. So Blueprints has the programming concepts there. Some people may talk, no, the Blueprint's not programming. I'm a C++ programming. I do a lot of code, so this Blueprints. No, it doesn't matter. You have programming concepts on Blueprints, and if you can learn how to program, how to do things in Blueprints, you have the essential concepts of programming, and you will be able to easily learn another language because it's very common, the concepts. It's conditional, variables, functions, all of these things are there in many other languages and tools. So it's possible, yes, to learn the fundamentals of programming on Blueprints. And about the guides, it was a lot of work. It took a lot of time, but yeah, but
That's an
yeah,
understatement. But it's true. Blueprints, they're a scripting language, but they're totally structured like a regular programming language. And I think, for me with like stuff like Scratch, there's lots of tools where we teach programming concepts without the burden of syntax and IDEs and compiling. But those tools have a very kind of hard limit. Whereas Unreal, you can use blueprints to do the same thing, but there's really no limit. You can go
yes,
from teaching Hello World to making Fortnite. It's the same tool. So I think for a lot of students and for people who kind of have that ability to see through the tech, when they use tools that have a hard limitation, it's kind of discouraging. Or I think a big opportunity for teaching and learning programming in Unreal is that you get to integrate in fun game stuff, and instead of just a chicken, you can use a particle system or a Paragon character or something that's a little more engaging and a little more, for students who have grown up with video games, you can teach them video game concepts and relate programming concepts to them because they get it. They're like, oh, 3 torches, I need an array. Like they start to get that because they're used to that. Like they speak game. So to introduce those dull concepts of programming like loops and stuff in a game environment, I think is really, really empowering. But I just had to inject that because I think that's really, it's a question that comes up a lot. It was kind of asked in the chat here, like, can you start with blueprints and then transition? And absolutely. I mean, start anywhere, start wherever you get that success.
Yes, thank you.
Because programming languages are programming languages, and once you kind of get how to speak it, yes, it's syntax here and whatever there, and it really opens up a world of possibilities to be able to interact with computers. But yeah, those guides are a lot of work, and for good reason, because we wanted them to be really, really excellent, like
epic,
just off the shelf. And
Thank you.
I just cracked it back open and was like, that's a lot of files. That was a lot of work, a lot of screenshots, a lot of slides.
Let's take a look at one in a minute, but there was a question that popped through here that I think is worth looking at about, question for non-game experienced software developers. Would you recommend getting proficient with blueprints and transitioning, or just driving and creating your own binaries? What do you think? So if for someone who's not a game developer, would you recommend, learning blueprints and then transitioning, to making your own other types of things? In other words, is blueprint a good thing to just learn straight up programming? And I guess maybe the question is, yeah.
But I think the question is if you're already an experienced programmer,
right,
a non-game programmer, should you go blueprint or just go straight to C++? And that's a good question, actually. A rarely asked one. I mean, my opinion would be either. I think you mentioned, Marcos, that blueprints are a nice way of kind of getting used to Unreal, because Unreal is so big. So it's nice to get used to like the gameplay framework and some of those Unreal concepts. But I do think as a seasoned developer, you'll be able to see the limitations of blueprints really early on, and you'll want to do some of your cool macros and whatever that you're used to doing. And it can do a lot of those things. But as far as, because Unreal is kind of it's a big universe in itself to learn about.
Yes, but I think it's important to know about blueprints, because one of the tasks of a C++ program is to build blueprints nodes, to create something that will be extending a blueprint. So you really need to know blueprint to program in Unreal. Of course, not a lot of it, but at least the essential concept. Even if your focus is to be a C++ programmer, because that's what's most you can create new blueprints, can create base class and you extend blueprints. So you need to know how this works, so how blueprints work to do that. So I think it's really important to know at least the basic of blueprints and then go on. You can learn both at the same time, no problem.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's someone said it in the chat. Like the ideal world is you're using both.
Right.
If you can build blueprint nodes in C++ and then implement them in Blueprint, you get the best of both worlds. You get, all the advantages of C, the speed, the text, you can merge if you're working on a team, etc. And then, there's advantages to Blueprint, like there's no compile time and, you can just modify things in the editor and iterate. So, and learning that kind of balance is key to learning how to be really effective in Unreal.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think maybe the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You should kind of start with blueprints because that's where your code will end up eventually, really, in a lot of ways, is in a blueprint class. Like even your character with all its crazy character movement ends up as a blueprint subclass of that. Really, in the end.
Yeah, and you yourself, Marcos, you are a traditional programmer who still uses a lot of Blueprint, as you work in Unreal Engine. So, I think there are probably purists out there that are like, no, I'm a, hardcore C++ guy or whatever. And, if I go into Unreal Engine, I'm going to just do C++. But I think that there are others that are hybrid, developer programmers who are like, I can build a very robust C++ node, expose it to Blueprint, and then do a lot of what I need to do inside of Blueprint as well. Or I have to work with a team, and so I'm going to expose a lot of nodes to Blueprint and enable and empower my team to work based on work that I've done in C++. So, I think there's a lot there that is possible if you're coming as a traditional programmer into Unreal Engine.
All right.
So, having said that, kind of one of the points of this stream is to kind of look at some of the content that was developed here in this instructor guide. And I'm going to go all the way back to the first guide. For those of you who have not downloaded or looked at this, you can you're all welcome to go and get this guide and download it and do whatever it is that you would like to do with it. But I wanted to just kind of walk you through some of this concept because every single one of these, and right now we're looking at the actual lectures, which are typically delivered in PowerPoint, but I have them here as PDFs. I just converted them myself. You're always going to get in the beginning of a lecture the goals and the outcomes, so you'll know what each lecture is about. And this is a pretty standard format. Each lecture has some basic information, and I want to share this with you also that you can sort of see what it is that you can extract from this material. What is Blueprint? What are the Blueprint types, the types of actors, the instances of classes, how you get to it. And so if you're actually teaching Blueprint, this can be really valuable and really helpful if you're just introducing this to a friend. Maybe you're just trying to refresh yourself or get up to speed. This can be a really helpful way to just maybe the documentation was confusing or you've read some other books. This is kind of a book in and of itself, but it's kind of broken down in a little easier way potentially to consume. And you can go through and sort of look at, how you place nodes inside of Blueprint. And lecture 1 kind of takes you through this process of getting, an understanding of the pins, how the pins work, how the execution graphs work. What the data pins do versus the execution pin. And then you get into chapter 2, which is actually the basics of programming concepts. And so, I know that I've used this material as a teaching guide when I've taught. One of the reasons being that I can give this material to those people taking the class and they can take it home and review it, right? So it's one thing to teach it and then walk away, but when I go in and start to explain all the variable types that are available inside of a blueprint, it's nice to say, well, these are color coded in this particular way, and then have this reference image to show them, and then show, of course, what the detail panel is, and how to set up, the difference between an array or a set type when you're creating variables, and how you create those types of things, what the difference is between a getter and a setter. And then, to have an image like this that shows very clearly the difference once you place those nodes. Additionally, things like arithmetic operators and all the various types of arithmetic operators that are available inside, relational operators, and so this is where we get into looking at blueprint nodes and how they actually can be useful in teaching programming concepts. Let me just look through a couple more. Now you also talk about functions and function inputs and outputs, and this is also another very valuable concept to expose to people that are trying to understand, how to learn and teach blueprints. Let me stop here and switch back because I think that, this particular lecture and these first couple are really valuable in helping people to just get their head around, this material in particular. I know that just those first couple of nodes, I've recreated a couple of blueprint projects where I've rebuilt some of those nodes and taken people through it. And, we have now at Epic a lot of people coming into Unreal Engine who maybe work at architecture firms or automotive companies that are not native programmers, and they still want to build interactivity. So they don't have, they've never programmed before. They don't know what blueprints are capable of. So to give them this basic introduction can be really, really helpful. Take a sip here. Now, as we keep going in this document, we get into, building actor classes. And this is a really important concept as well, because there are so many different types of blueprints that are available. We start talking about components, the difference between a construction script and an event graph, different types of events. And you can see that, this is a really well developed, and this is chapter 3 out of 12 chapters, or, 12 different lectures that are available inside of this particular guide. And we get into, various specifics, creating inputs. And, I think it's important, and Tom and I spend a lot of time, and Mark spends a lot of time lecturing about Unreal Engine. And there's a lot, and Blueprint is threaded throughout Unreal Engine. So, the input system is a really important part of it, and being able to explain, the power and how easy it is to create input into the engine, then expose that to Blueprint. And there are many tools where that's just not as well developed, specifically real-time tools. Of course, you can't get away from explaining the gameplay framework with relationship to teaching Blueprint and Unreal Engine, because that is such a large part. And so this is another very good lecture if you have to teach the gameplay framework in Unreal Engine, and the relationship, for instance, between controller and pawn, and then how that relates to game mode. That can be a really useful set of lectures in here to help explain, subclasses and game mode, and the subclasses within the game mode. So, here's some really great lectures. So if you find yourself having to teach this, and if you're not teaching it, this is something that is really important to teach to those new to Unreal Engine, because, I'd probably say we've been to many institutions, academic institutions, where people don't know that this is something that's already built in and available to everyone. I'd say by the time we get into, of course, you can't talk about Blueprint without talking about Unreal Motion Graphic. There's a great section in here about it. And I wanted to get to lecture 10, 11, and 12 when we actually get into Blueprint in action. And so these are really helpful lectures, because now we start talking about coordinate system and using transforms, and then set actor location and get actor location and relative transforms. And building functions for moving things around the world. This is really important, points and vectors, and understanding how to move things around inside of Unreal Engine, and which nodes you really want to access. And you can see here that now we're talking not just about Blueprint, but about the concept of moving things around 3D space. And, so this isn't just a guide about, specifically what Blueprint does, but about, aligning that to the vector math that sometimes you need to know in order to make these things work. We get into concepts like dot product, which can be really important as you're placing actors on a surface, and full concepts of vector operations of all different kinds. By the time we get into Blueprint in Action 2, we start getting into really important concepts like traces and line traces and collision different types, and understanding different types of hit results. If you send a ray out from the camera, what does it hit? What can you do once it finds an actor of a different type? And once again, we use these things in Blueprint constantly to do all kinds of triggering. There are multiple different types of traces in the engine. So Marcos covers different types of traces: line trace by channel, multi-line trace by channel. And then there's some great debugging information that you can find inside of some of these nodes. And this is just really, really fantastically laid out as a teaching and learning tool. So how to spawn actors inside, Blueprints are really powerful because of their ability to generate content inside of of a runtime event. How to attach components, attach sound, attach particle systems, destroying actors of different kinds. And then we get into Blueprint in Action 3, where we get into, as Tom mentioned earlier, examples of like modulo, clamps, mix, min, and max, set material. You can totally change material parameters inside a Blueprint, enabling input for the character. This is great examples of different things that you can do. But once you get through all this material, as I mentioned, there are a series of exams. There's a terminology sheet. So if you are teaching this and you need a terminology sheet that you just want to quiz anyone, then there are a series of tests. So, I'd say the one downside about the tests that we provide in here is that the students can always go and download this material as well. And we also provide the answers. Don't tell anyone.
They would never do that, Louis.
So this is a super valuable learning and teaching resource. I encourage you all to download it. I was, I wonder, let me see here. Trying to get some metrics about how many times it's recently been downloaded, but it's taking some time to get those from our online tool. It's not the fastest.
It's not the most responsive
thing, but it's been downloaded a lot. Let me put it this way:
at least 5 or 6 times
a
today,
lot.
I think, in the chat here.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a super valuable guide. Anything else that you would like to add that I didn't get to mention there, Marcos or Tom? I know that you both worked on this and making sure that it actually shipped.
Yeah, I just want to, these guides we kind of sunk a lot of effort into because we wanted them to be really high quality. They've all passed technical review, so Marcos knows what he's doing. But even then, we still passed it through myself and other people at Epic to make sure that that everything was the way that we would want to teach it. So all of the guides, and there are a couple other guides too, we approach that way. Like we want to make sure that what's in them is what we would, how we would teach it, or that it's not going the wrong way. And then we went and got them fully copy edited. So like they even look nice and have good spelling and grammar in them. So if you do decide to use them, and you stand up in front of your class, it should have correct spelling and grammar, because that would be kind of embarrassing for you and by extension us as well.
Yes,
so,
and all the unreal terms are correct.
Marco said, it was a lot of work, and it really ended up being, a project, a passion project, because there's just so much to cover, and making curriculum is hard work.
Yes, I had a personal motivation because I mean when Louis sent me a mail about that, I was thinking, really? I mean, I will write the official guides. I mean, something like I am the blueprint guy of Unreal
That's
Engine. So I think that's a special motivation for me. I mean, this kind of how can I say? Sorry, I forgot the word. I mean, the knowledge about my work, the reference about my work. I will be this person that will do this work. So this is very important to my motivation to keep going, to go ahead and finish this job, this work.
Well, I think everyone
Yeah.
here benefits from that motivation. So thank you again. So
Yeah, absolutely. Your motivation and your dedication to and that's the thing is this is a dedication to students you've never met. You've helped probably thousands and thousands of people
Oh.
and touched thousands and thousands of people. I knew you before I knew you. And then we started working on the book and I was like, oh my God, now I know who I'm talking to. Like, oh man, I need to shape up because he knows what he's talking about. He taught me everything I know, and here I am reviewing this book. How the turntables turn. Our community is so key to everything that we do because this is the education team. We've grown a bit, but we're still just a few people, and really you are our education team, and everyone in the chat today is our education team, and all the educators that dedicate themselves to this and go out there like you do and put on an Unreal shirt, and you have this passion for what we're doing, and we are hugely indebted, and we thank you so much, and thank you to everyone out there that is doing the same thing, because we know that there's tons of people out there that just they go and they show their friends and they show their classrooms and they show everyone what they're doing, and there are champions out there. So thank you, Marcos, and thank you everyone else that does this.
Yeah,
I think it very much is the epic way.
Yeah. And there's plenty of people in the chat also thanking as well too. There's an interesting question. People are one gentleman, or Jimmy Anime All is asking if they wanted to start someplace, would it be better to start with the table of content for your compendiums or with the instructor guide? What would your opinion be, Marcos, or
As
anyone?
Self-learning?
To learn Blueprint, yeah.
Yes, I mean, the blog is easy to access. So you just access the internet or mobile, just access the blog, take a quick look at that. And then the guides are more structured work. They are more organized. And I think it's more for really to teach, for instructor, but for self-learning too. But I think both they are complements. One complements the other, and I think there's no depends on the person. Try both and decide for yourself. I don't think there is a correct way to know. Start there. There are similar contents present in different ways.
Sure.
Yeah, when we did a survey actually of people who downloaded these guides about a year ago. And we were really surprised by how many people who were self-learners who had downloaded the guides and had found them useful, because intended for them, like you said, to be for people to educate with. There are some people who they like to learn, slide with bullet points, and that helps them absorb that information. Other people like me, I like to take it apart. Like, I'm like, where's the project files? Yeah. I'll read the manual later. I'll dig into it first. And others are like, give me the manual, give me a YouTube video. I want to see someone do it first. There's all these different kinds of learners. And So any opportunity that we have to, when we find content like yours, to put that out there and encourage it, and whatever format it's in, we're like, good, because that'll help somebody teach
Yes.
it, learn it. Everyone's so different in how they approach these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the other piece of advice is buy his book. That's probably a good,
Yes,
another
yes,
good way.
yeah.
That is the best
So-
advice. Is there a link to
There's
a store page?
Yeah, it's actually
I
on.
received great feedbacks about my book.
Yeah, if you go to the blog and click on the image, it'll take you to the Amazon webpage where you can purchase the book.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, that has the correct reviews. There we go.
So Tom,
Awesomely
maybe you'll,
reviewed.
yeah, there we go. Put it right up on there.
Mhm.
There it is in the chat. So now then, I don't know. So not that long ago, you decided that you wanted to tackle C++. And so you started jumping in. Now, can you show us, would you mind sharing your screen again and going back to your blog and showing us what the C++ compendium or nodes look like, so that people get a sense if they want to learn C++ and sort of give us a roadmap of what you're building there?
All right. A moment.
Hey, look, it's us.
How about it?
Wow. So, my my style of writing things, I mean, is really focused. I like to, my article is not very long. So I like to write about small things so you can understand concepts, and then keep building step by step. So let's return here. There is an introduction about the project here. And I give a motivational reason why I think that is, so why I decided to write about C++. I think after the book, I think that I wrote a lot of blueprints. I think, of course, there are always another thing, but after I became interested in C++, something like a new challenge is to go ahead to. So that's why I started about the C++. And then, as I said, my project is something like I have an overview of my project, what I want to talk about. But for example, in part one, I already developed the game, and I'm keep writing about. But part two, and it's something that I keep building as I go. I mean, I don't think about a complete project like a book. I have some directions, and then I keep learning, keep teaching, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep going, and then keep writing. But I choose. It was a joy to think about that for a moment, but I choose to use the same sample project that I use in Blueprints to collect the statement. It's a small different, but because my goal here is not to teach game design. I want to teach you how, since if you already have a Blueprint project and you do the same project in C++, you'll be able to see the relation, the similarity of the project, of the concepts, of the nodes, of the functions, how they are related. So that's why I choose to do the same project. Let me show here. So I have the basic of installing Visual Studio. Here, the simple game, C++. Here they are. So, I mean, it's the same game, but in C++, because I like this game because they are simple, but they have some rules that you need to program in the game, that you need to to work with function, with logic operators. So there is one main difference between the Blueprint only project is because we create the original. I call not stop my state with a collectible, and then I extend in Blueprint my C++ class. So to give an idea to the user, oh, this is how it works. But it's the same game with the same rules, just a small change. Here, I try to do my first practice. I try to do the process as simple as possible, but complete. So this is the four main class. This has the game mode and the character are from the templates, the third-person templates that are created when you create a new project in C++. And then I just create another two class. I mean, it's important to be simple so you can understand this completely, this
Sure.
first project, so you can really see what's going on. And then here's the project's already available, the complete with source codes here, so you can already take a look at the project. And then keep it going. Let me see a concept. I get the last one, first function in C++. So of course this is a step by step. You need to read the orders before reading this. But it's something practical, but I explain the concepts. So I explain what are you doing. And then this function is just to initialize the variables of the game. But I explain where what's the function declaration, function definition. This is the head files. This is the implementation file. This is the code. Sometimes I put the complete code or just parts of the code to show. I mean, we need to declare the function here. We have variables. And then this part is not a complete reference. It's just to show, oh, there is something like that. So you have the first context with a lot of concepts. Of course, in the part 2, I will explore in depth the C++ concepts. But I explain enough so you can be able to develop a game like this, my game, so you can change. The idea is really important when you are learning that you, for example, if you're learning, follow my blog and you can recreate this game and then try to change small things, add more things on yourself. Imagine, let's do another object that do all the things and try. It's possible to do both things, study, learning, keep trying new things. So you need to have the need to, how can I do that? And then keep looking for the solution and keep learning and go ahead. So that's my style. It's very similar to my RealScript blog. I think the important thing is that I try to explain what you're doing, the codes, not just put this text here and compile. So I'm really going. There are some C++ concepts. This operator, I give the name because the user needs to become familiar with these C++ terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. It's the same style that I use a lot of times.
Yeah, but you can copy and paste these nodes, which is different than the Blueprint nodes. And you can copy and paste the text into a Visual Studio or Xcode.
Yeah, it says this in Visual Studio is just a text editor, so you can just copy and paste the code. It's useful when you because sometimes when you have an image of code, or it's an advantage of text code because you can just select that, Ctrl+C, and Ctrl+V on your project instead of an image. So there is this advantage of using the text here. So you can just check something, how it's working, to copy in your project.
This is really fantastic because I've heard some feedback from the community that when they're trying to learn Unreal, they encounter a lot of Blueprint stuff, especially for kind of intro basic stuff. But there are a lot of people who don't really want to approach it from that side. They want to approach it from C++. But we kind of have this kind of a pattern with our stuff that we're like, start in Blueprint, and then when you reach Blueprint or you get good, go to C++. But there's a significant number of people who are like, I just want to start with or teach or use C++ from the very beginning. And so having something that's very much like, here is just so basic of a game, very much the same thing that you built over here in Blueprints, here's how it is, and having that one-to-one is really unique. And it takes a lot of work to build this up like that. So it's such a hugely valuable resource. And for people who are like, should I begin with C++ or Blueprints? If you know C++, this is a really good start, and it's it shows how you would kind of structure this, and you can see you still end up back in Blueprint,
Yes.
whether you like it or not. It's kind of how things work, and this is, and also kind of describing some of the C++ isms in here and the way you do is really nice, because again, it's in context of this, game engine. So concepts like objects become a little easier to understand when it's like that pickup there is the object. Whereas when I learned programming, it was like, you create a class and then you instantiate that and it becomes an object in memory, and then you reference the object. And I was like, but with games, I'm like, that coin that's spinning, that's okay, that's an object. I got it. That makes sense to me.
Yes.
So what's the plan? So you've got, I think it says it in the beginning, but you've got already looks like 6 or 7 sections of it, and you will continue to build the sections out and for part 1, and then you'll have a part 2. Is that right?
Yes. My plan is to finish part 1 at the end of this month, and then may take some days to planning part 2 before I start again. Keep writing. I don't work with exactly schedule. I mean,
yeah.
I keep going. I don't. Sometimes I work a lot more than if I. Sometimes I can work. Sometimes I cannot work.
Sure.
I don't have a strict schedule to my projects and myself from my own project, of course.
Well, everyone here benefits from you being stuck at home working on this stuff. So
silver linings, right? We gotta have a silver lining. Yes, Marcos is making us better content. Yay!
So are there any?
Was it 2020? Was it?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Are there any questions in the stream? I'm sorry. What'd you say?
No, I mean the fact that I was chosen by the Epic Mega Grants program, I think it's so awesome for me. So it's a really, really, really great motivation for me to show my work to I mean, because Epic Games. Sorry, I forgot the words. But I mean, since I was chosen, it's important to me to show my work. All right, that's what I want to say.
Oh, absolutely. Now, for those of you not aware, Epic, do you want to share what Epic Mega Grants is, Tom or Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Mega Grants, if you're out there right now and you're doing what Marcos does or anything, like you're out there doing amazing things with Unreal in the community, you should let us know. and a great way to do that is through the Mega Grants. So the Mega Grants is a $100 million fund that we set up a few years ago to fund development in the games and 3D arts and ostensibly in open research and opening up the creative community, the 3D creative community. And of course, a huge portion of that is earmarked for education. And that includes educators who are out there outside of the traditional education system, people who are in the traditional education system. So, that's there to help you. If you're spending time, we can recognize you with that. If you have a cool idea, we might be able to help you with that. If you're doing something amazing and you're like, well, Epic should know. Well, we should, and we'd love to know. And we might even help fund whatever your dream is. And because we want to recognize you, and we want to make sure that you are motivated because people see this stuff and it's amazing. And I think it can be hard when you build this sort of content and put it out there to know that it's doing anything. So we want to be able to recognize y'all, and we want to be able to see it so that we can share it too. So it helps you become a known person here and with our community. And like I was saying before, y'all are our everything.
Yeah, Mark, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm just absolutely everything you're doing is really helping the entire community, and it has been helpful to me in the past. And I'm sure that there's a lot of teachers very grateful for what you've done, because even preparing a lesson plan the way in which you have done, we know how long it takes. So having one central source for somebody who's put these things together and tested and knows their work is absolutely amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you very much.
yeah, to add to what Tom said a little bit, this is a great example of mega grants really being used the way that they were in many ways intended to be used, which is, Marcos builds this material and he makes everyone in the Unreal Engine community better, with this material, and has been doing that now for years and years and years. So, this is absolutely a winning formula for mega grants. And if you have a proposal like this is the way to help be successful. Mark put in the chat a blog that is really helpful, which is what educators need to know about mega grants, which helps any of you who are thinking about doing something maybe similar to this understand what it is that the reviewers for the specifically education focused mega grants might need to know about, making sure that you make clear goals and clear deliverables. And we have awarded already millions and millions of dollars for folks focused on education.
42 million.
42 million for folks focused on education.
As the last press that we actually had.
Oof.
That's quite a lot of millions.
Well, I was just going to say, man, we got a lot more work to do.
I know, we're still trying to give away money.
You'd be surprised how hard it is to give away millions of dollars.
The fact that there's
really
so many
difficult.
great projects out there, and we have to actually look at them. We have to talk to people. We have to find out what's the best ones. It's really hard to pick, but we're very
really
proud
is.
of everything everybody's doing in the community is amazing.
Absolutely. We're coming up to the end of our stream now. Is there any specific questions you all would like to ask Marcos specifically as we are wrapping up today?
No question. Just thank you very much for inviting me. It's a very important opportunity to show my work and my past work too. It's amazing that I had this opportunity. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. We're really thrilled to be able to share your material with the community here on Twitch also. And for those of you who are not aware, what we do with these streams is we will, in a couple of days or so, we'll convert them into a YouTube video that we'll put up on our educator playlist on UnrealEngine.com's YouTube channel. So you'll be able to rewatch this. Of course, the VOD will be available on Twitch here after the fact as well. So you missed any of this and you wanted to rewatch it, you're welcome to pop back here in a little bit and you'll see the VOD.
Right.
Anything else you gentlemen would like to add before we're wrapping up for today?
And just thanks to everybody for coming this evening. It's a really good turnout, and it's always good to see so many people who are genuinely interested in education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been these Friday streams have been really fantastic. It's wonderful to see what a active and vibrant community we have, and thank you, Marcos, for coming and for everything you've done for us.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
We've got some great streams coming up in the next couple of weeks. We haven't specifically nailed down the date, but we are, I think a couple weeks ago we had some of members of our character team join us, talk about becoming a AAA character artist. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to bring some of our audio designers to come talk about what it means to become an audio designer, which we're really excited about because audio is one of those things that we forgot to put audio in our project. So we want to bring
James,
that.
that's now.
Yeah. I love audio, and as I always say to students,
all the audio people are mad at us now.
when we're teaching stuff that's graphics, and I love graphics, it's amazing because you can fill sort of this space in front of us here, and it's wonderful. Or VR headsets, but with audio, you fill the entire room.
That's right. A huge part of the experience. So we're really excited about bringing some of the super talented audio designers on to talk about their work and how to become one of those guys and gals. And we also are looking forward to, in the next couple of weeks, to talking to some of the specialists at Epic that focus on our marketplace and talk about what it means to become a marketplace seller and how, if you are a teacher, if you are a student, if you are, at an academic institution, you're like, hey, I see a bunch of cool stuff on the marketplace. How do I, maybe get my stuff on the marketplace? So we're going to invite those guys in to talk about making sure that they help explain, if you want to become a marketplace seller, what are the best ways to get Epic's attention and to make your stuff perfectly tuned so that you can get it up there. And, I know that we have sellers that make a very healthy living on our marketplace these days. So that'll be an exciting stream amongst many others that we are looking forward to sharing with you. So once again, thank you, Marcos, and we really look forward to continuing to follow your work. Thank you again, Mark, and thank you, Tom. And we hope that you all have a safe and productive weekend and stay safe and away from nasty bugs. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.